Friends, welcome to the subject Database Management System. Today's session is session number 10 and the topic is data models, schemas and instances. Students, you very well know we are in second chapter, that is database concepts and architecture, and the today's topic is data models, schemas and instances. Point number 1, many data models have been proposed. Point number 2, data models can be categorized according to the types of concepts they use to describe the database structure as 1. High level or conceptual data models, second. Low level or physical data models, and third. Representational or implementation data models. Students, as you very well know, there are many types of data models that can be identified, and the data models can be categorized on various bases. One of the bases, that is the concepts they use to describe the database structure, are high level or conceptual data models, low level or physical data models, and the third category is representational or implementational data models. We'll learn more about this in the next slides. First, high level or conceptual data models provide concepts that are close to the way many users perceive data. Students, conceptual level data or high level data model is the way the user perceives the data or understands the data. Second, low level or physical data model. These provide concepts that describe the details of how data is stored in the computer. Concepts provided by low level data models are generally meant for computer specialized and not for typical end user. Students, as you know, low level or physical data models, okay, tell how the data is really stored on the physical media. So this is a topic pertaining to computer professionals and not the end users. Third category is representational or implementation data models. It's between the high level and low level data models and provides concepts that may be understood by end users but that are not too far remote from the way the data is organized within the computer. Students, representational or implementation data models falls in between the high level data model and low level data model. Representational data models hide some details of data storage but can be implemented on a computer system in a direct way. Now we'll take up conceptual or high level data model. These use concepts such as entities, attributes, and relationships. We'll study what is entity, what is attribute, and what is relationship. Point number 2. An entity represents a real world object or concept, such as an employee or a project that is described in the database. Point number 3. An attribute represents some property of interest that further describes an entity, such as employee's name or salary. Point number 4. A relationship among two or more entities represents an interaction among the entities. For example, works on the relationship between the employee and the project. Students, if you consider two entities, that is, employee is an entity and a Project is an entity. So employee works on projects. So relation between employee and project is that employee works on project. So relationship is works on. Now we'll take up representational or implementation data models. Point number 1. These are the models used most frequently in traditional commercial database management systems, and they include the widely used relational data model as well as the so-called legacy data models, the network or hierarchical data models that have been widely used in the past. Point number 2. Representational data models represent data by using record structures and hence are sometimes called record based data models. Now we'll take up physical or low level data models. Point number 1. These describe how data is stored in the computer by representing information such as record formats, record orderings, and access paths. So, students, physical or low level data model relates to how data is actually stored, how data is accessed. Okay. So, these are minute details that are of interest to the computer professional. Point number 2. An access path is a structure that makes the search for a particular database records efficient. So students, with the help of access path, you can access any record. An index is an example of an access path that allows direct access during using an index term or keyword. Having index is the way you can access any location in the storage media. Now we'll take up schemas, instances, and database state. So this is point pertaining to 2.1.2. Point number 1. In any data model, it is important to distinguish between description of the database and the database itself. So we should distinguish between description of the database and database itself. Point number 2. Database schema is the description of the database. So if you have to describe the database, you can draw a table and indicate how is the data going to be stored. Point number 3. It is specified during database design and is not expected to change frequently. Students, for example, you can consider one database such as student database or company database. In the student database, you can have tables like student, course. The student table consists of roll number, first name, last name, and marks in the previous class and native place. Similarly, you can study the class table as a roll number, student name, first name, class, subjects, etc. Schema diagram. Point number 1. Schema diagram. Most data models have certain conventions for displaying the schemas as diagrams. Point number 2. So schema can be represented as diagram. Point number 2. A displayed schema is called a schema diagram. The schema diagram displays the structure of each record type but not the actual instance of record. So schema diagram tells the structure, the way the data is going to be stored, not actual the record. database terminologies. The actual data in database may change quite frequently. For example, the database changes every time we add, delete or update a record in the table of database. Students, consider a database where you got student table. The student table has number of records pertaining to each individual student. So for example, if there are 10 students, there are going to be 10 records. Okay, so database has got 10 records, and once one student leaves, his information is deleted. So the one record is deleted. That means there are 9 records. So this way the data changes in the database. The data in the database at a particular moment in time is called database state or snapshot. Students, you can just consider what is database state. For example, if some students are sitting in the class, and if you take a photograph, you can just identify how many students were present at that moment in the class. So whether some people have left earlier or some people have joined earlier, that is not identified. What is identified is what is the number of students or who are the students sitting at that moment of time. So database state or pertains to the number of records present in the table at that moment. It is also called the current set of occurrences or instances in the database. In a given database state, each schema construct table has its own current set of instances. Many instances can be constructed to correspond to particular database schema. For a given database schema, there can be number of state. Database state changes as we add a record, we delete a record, or we update a record. Third, every time we insert or delete a record or change the value of a data item in a record, we change one state of the database into another state. Next point, the distinction between database schema and database state is very important. When we define a new database, we specify its database schema only to the DBMS. At this point, the corresponding database state is the empty state with no data. Students, when you define the structure of the new database, at that time no records are present in the database or no records are present in the table. So it seems to be empty state. When there are no records, only structure is defined. Next point, we get the initial state of the database when the database is first populated or loaded with the initial data. Next, after initial state, every time an update operation is applied to the database, we get another database state. So students, as earlier we have studied, the state of the database changes as we add a record, as we delete a record, or we update the contents in a record. The DBMS is partly responsible for ensuring that every state of the database is a valid state. So it is job of the database management system, which is the software, to ensure that the state of the database is valid. That means database contains valid information. Invalid or not persistent, consistent information should not be stored. Now let us know what is valid state. Valid state is that state that satisfies the structure and the constraints specified in the schema. Next, we'll take up metadata. Metadata is the description of the schema, constructs and constraints. So students, metadata gives description of the schema the constructs and the constraints. Next, metadata is stored in the DBMS catalog so that DBMS software can refer to the schema whenever it needs to. Next, we'll take up intention and extension. Intention, the schema is sometimes called the intention. Extension of the schema is the database state. So students who have taken up new topic, that is database schema, okay, instances, etc. And please write this PDF file in your notebook. Also go through the video 2 times, then you will understand. At present, you can just understand database consists of 2 or 3 tables containing relevant information. For example, a company database will consist of tables like employees, department, project that is going on, works on, okay, like that. Student database will consist table of student, class, college, etc. Okay. So please, this is a new concept. Initially, you may find it little bit difficult, but afterwards, you will find it easy. Once you learn these terminologies, the further discussion would be easy. If you got any doubt, you can give me a call. The book for this is Fundamental of Database, okay, by Nawate and Ilsmari. It is available online also. Thank you.